Story 1, my tree was cut by an HOA I didn't belong to, so I lit that bastard up. I posted this over in fuckHOA and a lot of them suggested I repost it here. I cleaned it up a tiny bit. This happened about 10 years ago. My house is the first house in the neighborhood behind mine. I am on the corner. The street on the side of my home is the HOA neighborhood, but my front yard is on a different street that isn't part of the HOA. When I moved, I asked them if I could pay their HOA fees to let my kids use the pool and playground directly across the street. Nope. I planted a mulberry tree on the corner of my property and started getting visits from their HOA saying that my branches were too low to the ground and it violated their HOA. I told them if I was in the HOA you'd see my kids swimming in the pool. Since they didn't, they would have to deal with my tree. My kids love that tree, and still come in spring to gather berries, even though they are in now their 20s. Then one day I come home and someone had lopped off a big branch from the tree, one that went out to the street. I tried to find out who did it, but they kept mum about it and there wasn't anyone I could go after. So, I rebuilt the branch using PVC, and wrapped it in bright Christmas lights. It was May, and then wrapped the rest of the tree for good measure. I did it ugly too. It was propped up with old branches I found in the woods and some rope, and just looked awful. I kept those lights on all the way until just before Christmas, when I took them down. They sent me some letters, but they just went into the trash. The HOA members who came to my house to ask me to bring them down since it was the gateway to their neighborhood and that I was probably affecting property values were told to fuck off. They never did mess with the lights, though. I guess they were worried about what I would pull next. I went and looked at my FB and found a pic I took. It doesn't have all the lights, but it shows most of the awful glory. You can see the wound on the tree about a foot above the fake branch going south. Garage says, I know of someone in a similar situation, house on corner, not part of HOA. First time they tried to mess with him, he placed an old white toilet at the edge of his property and planted a fake flower in it. She who loves to draw says, tree laws could have been a major factor in your favor when you discovered the damage. Litha Giraffe says, oh geez, that is a giant glowing middle finger, huzzah, my good man. That's a petty revenge story too. Maybe you should have been nicer when you laid me off. I worked for a company for 6 years that had a lot of members only and public events. Eventually, I was in charge of promoting these events. I installed my own software on my workstation to make my job easier, and so I wouldn't have to create the artwork and flyers from home. The software was Adobe Photoshop, Acrobat, and InDesign before the Creative Cloud subscription was developed. It wasn't cheap, and I never asked to be reimbursed for it because it made my job easy. When my husband had a motorcycle accident and I was about to miss a lot of work, they set up remote access for me. I could still perform my job from the hospital next to my husband's bedside. The company was sold and for 2 years, my job never changed. Then one day, the general manager and HR came into my office. He informed me that due to a slowdown in business, I was being laid off effective immediately. I said, okay. Let me grab my stuff and it'll be off. All I wanted was the stupid stuffed animals that were sitting on my monitor that were gifts from members and my husband. The GM said, no, we'll get them to you later. Really? They forgot to remove me from remote access to my desktop. I logged into my workstation and uninstalled Adobe Photoshop, Acrobat, and InDesign. I didn't touch anything else. All of my files were left in place. Then I waited. 2 weeks after I was let go, I received a phone call from the assistant GM. She was taking over my duties and needed to finish the artwork for a project that I was working on, but she had problems opening the files. I asked where my stuff was and when could I get it back. She said, soon. I told her to buy Photoshop, Acrobat, and InDesign, or she could go online and find some open source software and learn how to use it. I received my stuffed animals a few days later. I don't know how they ever finished my artwork. Side note, I ran into the GM while grocery shopping a month after being laid off. I found a new, better job and was happy. After exchanging pleasantries, I hugged him and thanked him for letting me go. Life is funny that way. Yet another brain fart says, I had the same thing. I was the only one who knew how a key system worked and the only one who could code, and code I did, 100k lines of it. Then there was the data, lots of extra days from different sources pulled in to keep the system aligned with the business. Nothing happened after I left for a couple of months, but after that all hell broke loose as everything started to come apart at the seams. Supplier had to come in to rescue them, but as the system was supported by lots of additional data, wrangling scripts, and some really complex configuration, they could only do so much. So consultants were hired, and they weren't cheap. In the end they replaced me with a team of 3. Met my old boss at an airport a year later. He was a good guy, told me that the I know better, you're lazy sitting at your desk all day, you're fired and I'm adding your salary to my own team. Executive was fired once the board realized the depth of the shit-filled hole she dug for them. According to LinkedIn, she's completely out of the industry and now working as an executive assistant. I guess she found her special place in hell. Nanya later says, I got laid off as things started going back to normal after COVID because the company I'd been working for started to struggle. I also have a marketing design background and it wasn't a great time to be looking for jobs in that field. About 3 months later I was at work at my new job that I just started and heard that the place that laid me off was shutting down. Had they not laid me off, I wouldn't have the job I have now, which is 100x better than any of my previous jobs. Funny how things work out sometimes. One who knew says, I was fired from a job for not fitting in. I was never sure what that meant, but several months later I went to my neighbor's church for a Christmas play, and who was the greeter at the door? You guessed it, the person who fired me. She visibly flinched when she saw me, so I made sure to make a beeline to her with a huge smile on my face. She looked scared, so I kept grinning and shook her hand, then said, Hi, I see you are doing well. I walked off and never saw or spoke to her again. It wasn't much, but very satisfying to me that for a brief moment she questioned her life choices. Story 3, mess up my bathroom? I don't think so. So, I 23F live with my cousin Rose 33F, her husband and kid. We share rent, Wi-Fi and electricity, the rest is separate. We have a 2-bed 2-bath apartment. They have a bathroom in their room but I don't. The washing machine and dryer is in my bathroom, and since they are 3, Rose basically does laundry every day. Now, since we do everything separate, that includes cleaning. Even though they frequently use my bathroom, I've never asked Rose or her husband to clean it, until recently at least. For the past weeks Rose has been leaving their laundry in my sink. If her husband is in their bathroom, she does her hair and makeup in mine, leaving stains and hair all over the place, and if she spills liquid detergent she just leaves it. I've asked her multiple times to clean up afterwards, but she says she'll do it later, but that never happens. If this were to happen only once in a while, no big deal, but this has been going on for weeks. Here's where I got my petty revenge, taking advantage of 2 things. 1, when she's on her phone she doesn't listen to. My boyfriend was coming over, so I needed to clean. So, I told her while she was scrolling IG that I was going to clean my bathroom since my BF was coming in, to make sure she didn't put any of her clothes in the sink or on the counter because I was going to be using bleach. She said but it was obvious she wasn't listening. I repeated the same thing a bit louder and asked her if she was listening, and she said yes, so I proceeded to clean, knowing exactly what would happen. A little while after I start, Rose walks in to take her clothes out of the washing machine, and just as I predicted, she sets them right on the counter. I told her that the counter was full of bleach and she freaked at me for not telling her. I told her that I did twice and she had said okay. Besides, she literally saw that I was cleaning and could smell the bleach. Even though she washed the clothes again, some of them were damaged. Was this petty of me? Yes, it was. Has she ever left my bathroom a mess again? No. Very petty but very satisfying. Mapalian says, petty, satisfying and effective. Luscious Lulu says, that's great. I've done something similar when I lived in an apartment building, and someone kept taking people's clothes out of the washer and using their cycle to clean their own clothes. I had forgotten to bring enough detergent, so I left to my apartment right next door to get more and came back, and my sopping wet clothes were on the floor and there was a bunch of dark clothes in my washing machine already churning away. I went back to my apartment, got the bottle of bleach, and fixed the problem that we all had been having. I never heard of them doing it again after that. I never found out who it was either. A whole tub of dark clothes with about half a bottle of bleach in it. I would have poured the whole bottle in if I had more. Rachel_Silver says, I had some Downy fabric softener that was clear and came in a transparent bottle. I noticed the level was dropping faster than it should. I emptied it and replaced it with bleach, and my housemate ruined all of his work uniforms the next day. Thanks for watching, I love you. Follow Reddit Echoes for more.